Hey everyone, Tankenstein here. Fox 3 missiles, active radar homing missiles. As you guys probably know by now, if you're watching my channel, you guys know that active radar homing missiles are going to be coming in the next major update of War Thunder, which is likely to come out, at least my guess, is going to be sometime within the next week as of the release of this video. If you guys don't know, active radar homing missiles, or again, Fox 3, are basically missiles that have radars within them that will be able to track onto enemy planes once they get within a certain range, give or take within 16 kilometers, at least per what the War Thunder dev server showed. Most of them are locking at 16 kilometers. Now, why do I bring this up? Well, a lot of people, and I mean a lot of people, have been talking about Fox 3 for not only just the last few weeks, but literally for years as to how that will impact the game. Fox 3 missiles are the biggest change to War Thunder at top tier since the introduction of better radar guided missiles or even all aspect missiles. These are absolutely game changing, legitimately, literally game changing missiles. And in this video, I will be going over that and kind of what my feelings are on the situation, how they might impact War Thunder, and if they might be an overall good, bad, or just kind of neutral thing for the game. I mean, heck, I named this video, or at least I'm assuming I'll be naming it, the Looming Disaster or Advancement of War Thunder. And that's kind of how a lot of people feel about it. But in my point of view, I'm not going to look at it like a Chicken Little sort of thing, right? Like the sky is falling, we all have to run, seek shelter, go maybe save the day. I'm not really looking at it in that regard because ultimately I've weathered quite a few storms in War Thunder. I've been playing this game for 12 plus years, right? Like if I'm not mistaken, it has legitimately been since July of 2011, maybe 2012, something like that. It's been a hell of a long time. Appeal to experience fallacies aside, let's get into it. And basically, the way that I'm looking at it, I'm sure some of you guys yourselves have tested out Fox 3 missiles on the dev servers and seen what they're all about, or at least kind of what they look like they're going to do. And bear in mind, everything in the dev server is subject to change up to and even beyond release. So what we see in the dev server, they might be totally different by the time this actually comes out. But in the dev server, you're basically able to, again, lock on. A lot of these planes have really good radars, so you're able to lock on to enemies no problem at 35, 40, 50 kilometers in some instance, again, with no problem. I've actually locked on beyond that, but it gets a little bit more difficult, of course, as terrain gets in the way and as distances go up. And then, of course, you can go ahead and fire your missile, and once that missile gets within, give or take, around 16 kilometers, I like to go a little bit closer to them, it will be able to track on itself. So at that point, it becomes kind of like an all-aspect IR-guided missile, except, of course, it's not IR guided, it doesn't have that sort of tracking, it instead has radar guided. Now bear in mind, if you guys don't know, these missiles, the Fox 3 missiles, so the AMRAAMs, the R-77s, the Micas, all of that, they have maximum overload of 30, 40, 50 plus Gs, especially the Micas, which I'll actually be going over a little bit more in this video compared to the other ones. And so what happens is that these are basically like super powered, ultra long range IR guided missiles, except again, they don't have to worry about being flared away because they have their radar in it, and that's how it tracks the enemy. It's a really crazy thing. So basically, it's almost kind of like missiles are going to be on steroids, right? And so a lot of people are worried that as soon as you get into a match, or at least shortly thereafter, the entire sky is going to be blanketed with missiles, because before, the only Fox 3 that you had in War Thunder were the Phoenix missiles carried by the F-14, and we all know how those are. They're not really all that agile, they're pretty easy to dodge. But the new Fox 3s, the actual Fox 3s, the one that people have been talking about, people are going to be worrying because Su-27s are going to be able to carry like 6 of them or 8 of them, however many of them. F-15s are going to be able to carry a ton of them. And pretty much every top of the top vehicle in any given tech tree is going to be able to carry numerous of these active radar homing missiles. So it's not just like 4 F-14s in a single match that are going to have pretty easy to dodge missiles. No, this is going to be like 16 vehicles in every match that are going to each have their own really advanced, ultra maneuverable, ultra long range, excellent tracking sort of missile, and they're essentially going to blanket the sky. And yes, I mean, I do kind of worry about that. After all, these sorts of things are totally unpredictable, right? Like, we do not know how the player base is going to use them, what the outcome is going to be, because in my short time on the dev server, it didn't seem like it would blanket the skies, right? Like, these missiles wouldn't be a huge problem. Yeah, they'd be a pain in the butt, but at least on the dev server, it didn't really seem too terrible. However, the big problem with the dev server is that each team only has like 2 to 6 human players. What happens when you have a team of 12? When you have a team of 16 human players, and the majority of them all have these missiles, and they're all locking on from 30 kilometers, and they're all firing from 16 kilometers, and they're all launching multiple missiles at that distance, which is still far enough where you don't actually physically see the enemy player. That I'm worried about. Now, do I think it's going to make top tier unplayable? No. By no means do I think it's going to be unplayable. I think it's going to be different. I do have a secret fear, not so secret anymore, that this is basically going to turn top tier into like a row of slot machines where you have like all those old people that are just pressing buttons mindlessly and they're just hoping that they win, but really most of the time they're just going to lose, as in War Thunder, you just get hit by the enemy missile and you lose a bunch of SL because of it. Who knows? That's kind of my fear, to be honest with you, because like with Phoenix missiles, you saw a lot of F-14 players just going high up in the sky, launching 4, 5, 6 Phoenix missiles, dropping down, and that was it. You know, I mean, it was just kind of brain rot in a way, right? Like, it kind of, as much as I hate to say it, you know, it's kind of funny, like the old guard, whatever, because I'm technically part of the old guard in this game, where it's like, oh, no skill, you know, it's like, it's kind of like somebody, because I myself love classic rock, it'd be kind of like me saying, oh, DJs, they suck, they're not talented, whereas a lot of them really are. So there is still going to be a level of skill attached to Fox 3 missiles. How much there will be, I'm not entirely sure. These missiles will be guiding themselves. You won't really necessarily have to get into a position in order to be able to fire them and guarantee a hit, like you do with a lot of close range IR missiles, or much more so like you would have to do with gun-based fighters, such as Spitfires, such as Zeros, Mustangs, so on and so forth. Basically, the longer range you get, the more brain dead it gets in War Thunder, unfortunately, and secretly, I do fear that that's going to happen. Do I think that's going to happen? By no means. I think it's going to get a little bit worse. I think it's going to get to the point where, quite honestly, it's going to become more annoying. It's going to be like a much more annoying version of the R-27 with top tier Russian planes, how it just seems like 90% of the time whenever you die, it's due to an R-27 of some kind. This will probably be like that times 2 or 3 or 4, whatever. It's going to suck, don't get me wrong, but we are humans, and what humans do is adapt, and I feel like we are going to learn ways to be able to dodge these missiles, to be able to minimize their threats. We're going to use environments in more nuanced ways than we did before. And kind of like how tanks would get more powerful cannons, you also get more powerful armor to stop those cannons. And it becomes kind of an arms race in that way. And even though these missiles are going to be substantially better than anything we've seen before, and next year we're probably going to have even more advanced missiles, guess what? Tactics are going to evolve. We might see nuanced ways to use countermeasures and things like that. Who knows? I mean, heck, we might get something like AWACS or Wild Weasel in the future that could help to defeat radar. Who knows? I mean, these things are all on the board, and it might happen where it's just like, yeah, these missiles kind of suck, but there are ways to protect yourself against them. So, do I think that the sky is falling? No, I do not. However, I am again a little bit concerned that's going to make the game quite a bit more annoying at top tier, and it's going to make it a bit more homogenous at top tier. So I feel like you're going to have fewer people getting like 3, 4, or 5 kills at least once everybody gets these active radar homing missiles. I feel like the first people to start getting these, you know, the people buying them with GEs just right off the bat, I feel like those people are going to have an immediate advantage because they're going to be fighting people who have no idea how to dodge these, and of course they're going to have these ultra long range missiles that are just really, really good. However, once we get to the point where the majority of people have them, kind of like how the majority of people have AIM-9Ls, have R-60Ms, have whatever the missile is, right? AIM-9Ms, R-73s, or the Chinese variants of that, or the AAM-3, whatever the case may be. I feel like it's going to eventually end up being like that, where, of course, these are substantially better than those missiles. I'm not at all comparing them, but it's going to be like, okay, you have this gun, I have this gun. It's not going to be like somebody with an M16 fighting somebody with a knife, it'll then be like an M16 versus an AK-74, you know, or some other variant of that weapon. Basically, what I'm saying is that there will be parity, at least eventually. I do feel like this is going to, again, homogenize top tier scoring at least a little bit. You're not going to have those outliers getting 5-6 kills as often, just because this kind of takes the skill out of it, and thus skill won't be as much of a factor as it would be, you know, with lower BR missiles like AIM-9Ls, or more so as it would be with gunfighters, because the more skilled you are with gunfighters, of course, the more likely you are to get a lot more kills, whereas that skill won't help you as much when it comes to all-aspect missiles, and it'll probably help you less when it comes to Fox 3. Of course, there is a level of skill, or at least knowledge, when it comes to setting the ideal radar type, or when it comes to which enemy you should fire at, or maybe how far away you should be firing. Of course, that will still come into play, but I do feel that skill will be less of a factor, and again, because it will be less of a factor, we're probably going to see at least a little bit some evening out of scores at and around top tier, at least where there are plenty of Fox 3 missiles in any given match. Now, I don't think that this is going to be like some huge thing that you're going to notice right away, but I feel like looking at the statistics long term, and especially with a large enough sample size, you are going to see fewer of those 4 or 5 plus kill matches than you would otherwise. But also what that means is that the people who may have only had 1 kill typically before, they might be more likely to get 2 kills before. So we're going to see a little bit of extra parity. Now, one thing that I am very concerned with, and I kind of wish I'd brought this up a little bit earlier, is going to be the difference in capability from people who are fully stock and fully spaded. So when you get into a match with your top tier, I don't know, F-15 or your Su-27 SM, and it's your first match, and the other players all have Fox 3 missiles, you are going to be blown out of the sky much more easily than you would have before, and that is my worry. It might make this stock grind absolutely hell. Potentially far worse than it is now, with people having to fight R-73s or AIM-9Ms when they hardly have any missiles themselves, or lack proper countermeasures, or whatever the case may be. I feel like this is going to make the stock grind far, far worse at top tier. But again, aside from those concerns where it's going to make scoring a bit more homogenous, it's going to take skill out just a little bit, and again, it's going to make the stock grind worse. I don't really think that this is going to kill War Thunder. I don't think it's going to kill top tier. I feel like they're going to have to balance some things out quite a bit, because if the Micas, for example, the French Micas, are going to be anything close to what they were in the dev server, they really have to fix that. And I want Gaijin to make it so that, of course, these are going to be somewhat realistic, because again, the main reason, at least why I joined this game, why I play this game, is because I get to play my favorite vehicles and have at least some sense of realism in those vehicles and the weapons that they use. And I want these vehicles and their weapons to be accurate. However, of course, we can't have it where one vehicle is totally annihilating everything else because its weapon is totally too powerful. So things like the Mica, for example, it's got to be balanced out at least in some way where it still reflects some level of realism, a good level of realism. But again, we'll have to wait and see, because currently the Americans have the AMRAAM A, which is not all that great. I heard some reports of them making complete 180 turns on a dime. I'm not entirely sure how accurate that is, but I can tell you firsthand from playing with the Micas that they were incredibly powerful, at least during the initial dev server where they had these being tested. But with that said, hopefully they can make it where these missiles are somewhat capable, at least insofar as their realism is concerned, but again, not so much where it's game breaking, kind of like when the Harrier GR1 first came to War Thunder and completely dominated everyone because it was too low of a BR, and the SRAMs were completely too overpowered, so it was kind of like a massacre. I'm hoping that this doesn't happen when Fox 3s come to War Thunder, but you never know. It very well might, and the initial week or two might be terrible teething pains at top tier. But again, who knows? I just don't think that the sky is going to fall. I feel like we're going to have to get used to it, and I feel like there's going to be a lot of back and forth, new tactics being developed, and I feel like this is going to advance the game, but it's going to end up making the game a bit more annoying, at least for people like me who like those close-in dogfights, who like gunfighting, who like MiG-21 type planes, who like all that sort of thing. It's going to be a bit more annoying, but again, I feel like this is an advancement rather than a total destruction of War Thunder. Also, Gaijin, if you guys are listening, I kind of like what Glide Daily said a few days ago. We should be focusing on older vehicles a bit more. It's getting a bit tiresome where it's like, oh, the new flashy vehicle comes out. It sometimes takes hundreds of hours to get through a tech tree, at least with minimal premium time or minimal minimal premium vehicles and whatever. So you might not see these vehicles. Like the Fox 3s might not ever be an issue that you see in War Thunder, especially if you're like low to mid BR. You might never reach this point just because it takes so damn long to get to. So I just wish from the bottom of my heart, Gaijin would refocus on World War II, maybe some early Cold War tanks. That would be awesome. I would love to see it because right now they're kind of giving us the Challenger Hellcat, the Challenger Demon. And yes, I get it, that by putting up all these Halo vehicles, right? Like the vehicles that are at the top of the top, that's what brings people in. Because once Dodge, for example, made the Challenger Demon, a lot of people went out of their way to buy a 6-cylinder Challenger, which was at the bottom of the food chain. I get it. That's what works when it comes to video games, when it comes to cars, all these sorts of things. But Gaijin, please, just for an update or two, stop giving us all this space age stuff. Just give us something from World War II. Give us a World War II heavy update with like tons of weird prototypes like the ME262 HG1, HG2, the Nahuel DL43. Give us all these weird things. I promise you, it's going to make people love this game even more. But again, Fox 3 is what we get, and we're gonna have to learn to deal with it. Either way, thanks so much for watching. Again, sorry for this really long video, but I'll see you all on the other side. Take care, everyone, and try not to get shot out of the sky too much with Fox 3.